Today we're going to be talking about Dragon's Dogma 2 Dark Arisen. Recently I had a chance to go over to Capcom and play an early version of the upcoming expansion for the game, and in this video I'm going to be doing my best to relay all the findings that I experienced during that particular playthrough. Now, most of the footage you guys are going to be watching in this video is going to be stuff that I captured on the PlayStation 5 Pro. However, I also got to experience the game on Switch 2 in handheld mode, which I think was particularly important because I believe one of the main concerns of the community at this point is going to be that of performance. So we're going to start by addressing that one. How exactly did the game perform? Well, the portions of the game that I played on the PlayStation 5 Pro ran silky smooth 60 FPS all of the time. Now, we really don't have frame counters on the PlayStation 5, so I can't tell if it's running exactly 60 FPS, but it sure as hell felt smooth throughout. If there were any dips, it couldn't have been any lower than like 55 FPS or something along those lines, because I didn't really notice noticeable stuff where the game started stuttering or anything like that. It was just smooth 60 throughout the whole experience. Now, an important thing to mention is we weren't really given the information as to what native resolution the game was running on and what mode the game was running on. Like I said, this is an early build, so not all of the stuff is implemented, so we don't know, is it running on performance mode? Is it running on quality mode? Is it running on some hybrid mode for the PlayStation 5 Pro? We don't really know. What I can tell you, and you guys can probably tell from the gameplay footage, is the game looks good, performs good, animates great, and no real issues were experienced by me throughout the entirety of the play session, which is definitely a big plus and a significant improvement as to at least how the game was running back on the base PlayStation 5 when I initially played it on PS5. At least that was my experience with it. Now, what does that mean for the actual final version? I'm not sure. I'm hoping we see significant improvements, but luckily I believe that any improvement that is made in terms of optimization should basically also be applied to the base version of the game. So I'd recommend people that have the base version of the game and you're like wondering, ooh, should I get into Dark Arisen? Am I going to have performance issues? Probably test it out as the patches start rolling out, because there's going to be a bunch of patches that are going to be applied to the game ahead of the release of the expansion. But now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about what it was like to play on the Switch 2. So the Switch 2, from the little bit that I've played on it, pretty much was able to sustain a stable 30 FPS throughout the whole experience. I didn't really notice any noticeable dips below 30. And I know that probably a lot of people are like, oh, I really wanted 60, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the Switch 2, particularly in handheld mode, you're going to be expected to have to make some concessions in order to put a world of the scale of Dragon's Dogma 2 in that console. So running stable 30 is something that I'm willing to accept if I'm somebody who's going to be playing the game on the Switch 2. It's pretty much the same at which we were experiencing the original Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen back in the Switch 1. It was also running stable 30, and it was pretty much stable throughout the entirety of the experience. And you guys might be wondering, okay, so you were experiencing stable 30 FPS on the Switch 2, doing what? Were you at a camp where nothing was happening? No, it was during a boss fight. It was actually fighting this frost dragon creature that was shooting up particle effects all over the place, casting spells. The pawns were casting spells, like devastating spells all across the screen. You're getting the special effects of like whenever the pawns enchant your weapons with, with fire and stuff like that. And you guys will be able to see what it looks like because Capcom did send over some B-roll for us to show what the Switch 2 version looks like, and you guys can kind of like get a feel for what that footage feels like, but pretty much that's all I can really tell you when it comes to performance for Dragon's Dogma 2 Dark Arisen. So now let's talk about the Dark Arisen experience itself. We were allowed to play about an hour of Dark Arisen, and we didn't really get to explore the old world, so we only got to explore the new region, the region of Norgan. That means that I didn't really get to go to any of the Lost Rite dungeons or any stuff like that. That is going to be the type of things you'll be experiencing in the final version of the game. Now, because I knew that the time was going to be somewhat constricted, I decided to focus on trying to play 3 classes, and I'll be honest, like, muscle memory was not really all there because it's been a long time since I've played Dragon's Dogma 2, but I focused on playing the spear hand, the fighter, and the warrior. Even though I didn't play too much warrior back in Dragon's Dogma 2, the reason I wanted to do warrior is because a warrior just feels so friggin' good. You grab like a big chunky weapon, you stab people with it, then you lift people up into the air, slam them back into the ground. The animations are just brutally satisfying, and it felt very adequate to the Norgan region because it is a Norse-themed expansion, and I was actually able to find some new weapon types, which was pretty cool. And by weapon types, I don't really mean weapons that have like new movesets or anything like that, but like for instance in the base game, if you were playing as a fighter, your choices were basically sword or mace. Well, in the region of Norgan, you're also going to be able to get an axe, which most of the time you see me play fighter in this, you're going to see me wielding an axe, which was very satisfying. As you guys know, I like axes, I like hammers, those are kind of like my weapons of choice, so seeing axes being represented was pretty cool. Even if the moveset is the same, it just feels nice to be running around in a fighter that is doing shield and axe, so that was cool. Warriors also get big two-handed axes, which was also pretty cool. I didn't really use those because I played most of the time with like this big sword that we had, but we did experience some of the new loot systems, which is not really a new loot system. It's a loot system that we had back in the original Dark Arisen, which is the spoil system. You pick up these spoils from defeating enemies and chests and all of that stuff. The more powerful the enemy is, or the further in the region the chest is, like the harder zones you find that chest in, the more likely it is to be a more powerful item, and then you bring that item back to camp, and an NPC reveals what the item is, and that item can come with skills and all kinds of good stuff. I'll talk more about that as we move on, because I feel like that is one of the most important systems to discuss. But the other thing that I was concerned about was the difficulty. What is it going to feel like once you get to Norgan and you start beating up on these monsters? Well, the characters we were provided with, both the main character as well as the main pawn and the two pawns that we had by default, were all around level 50, and the game still felt significantly challenging, so that's good, but I'm not exactly sure how it's going to feel once I get in there with my actual characters that have the actual builds that I've already worked on and all of that good stuff. It'll be interesting to see, but it has solidified my decision to maintain the characters that I had and just go into the DLC, and then later down the line I'm going to be focusing on basically doing hard mode and all of that stuff, because the version of the game that we played still doesn't have hard mode, and I believe that even though hard mode has been somewhat confirmed by the team, it might not be a feature that is available at release, but that is definitely one of the things that I want to explore once that becomes available. But for now, this was just normal mode, and at level 50 it still felt challenging. In terms of exploration, Norgan is naturally a snowy region. You're going to be fighting these characters called the Bjorken that look kind of like Vikings, and they have wolves that support them, and I thought that that was pretty cool. It's thematic, it's appropriate since this is a Norse-themed expansion. That felt really nice. I enjoyed exploring this zone because you guys know one of the main things when it comes to Dragon's Dogma 2 is whether or not the exploration feels satisfying, and it definitely did, even if it felt like I didn't really play enough to get like a good sense of what that area feels like, because only 1 hour with the scale of the world of Dragon's Dogma 2 is always going to feel somewhat limiting, and you always want to be like, oh, can I just play a little bit more? But there are limitations to these types of play sessions, so it is what it is. But I greatly enjoyed it. I thought it was very immersive, and one of the things that I liked is that they're introducing this new item, which is like a rope with a hook on the point. I forget what was the exact name of the item, but basically as you navigate, this area has a significant amount of verticality. So as you navigate and you roam around and you start climbing through the mountains and doing all of that stuff, eventually you run into these big hitching posts, and you can use this item of the rope and the hook, and you can kind of like hitch it to the hitching post, and that will basically give you a rope that you'll be able to climb that effectively becomes kind of like a shortcut, so that the next time you're navigating the area, you can go up that shortcut and it'll be faster to progress than having to go all around the mountain like you went the first time around. So that is going to be something that I consider to be a little bit of quality of life, which is pretty nice. Another quality of life feature that I noticed is that I came across like 2 port crystals within just 1 hour, which is pretty good. And I don't mean the actual item that you find, I mean like port crystals that are placed into the world. And I think they're going to be a little bit more generous with port crystals this time around, simply because in the original Dragon's Dogma, whenever you pick up a piece of loot, you can instantly equip it, you can start using it and all of that. But whenever you pick up meaningful pieces of loot in Dark Arisen, you're going to need to go back to camp to identify them. And you already have the Eternal Fairy Stone, which has been introduced with recent patches of Dragon's Dogma 2. So having that and having a couple of more port crystals to allow you to basically go back to camp from time to time and, you know, just identify the items, figure out if you want to use them or not, is going to be something that's going to be a part of your gameplay loop. So I think that they're going to be allowing a lot more fast travel this time around, but that's just my initial impressions from having explored that area for about an hour. I could be wrong, but that's kind of like the vibe that I got from what I experienced there. Combat, naturally, if you've experienced combat in Dragon's Dogma 2, this is more of that. It still feels very responsive, feels really cool, grabbing onto enemies, climbing them, doing all of that stuff. I got to experience some of the new pawn mechanics that they've added. I mean, it's basically 2 abilities that I was able to experience, and both of those abilities you've already seen in trailers and the like, which were the ability of, like, when the pawn climbs up onto a monster, like in my case it was this frost giant looking creature, which kind of reminded me a little bit of the Cyclops, except he's covered in fur, got like a big mace smacking you down, trying to kill you. It had a lot of HP, or maybe I was just playing very poorly and it took me a long time to kill it. But during that, at some point, one of the pawns climbed up on top of it and it started glowing green, kind of like giving you the indication, hey, come over here. So then you go there and you jump, and as you jump, the pawn grabs a hold of your hand and like yeets you upwards. So it helps you climb higher faster, which is a really good mechanic, because a lot of times whenever you're fighting big monsters, you spend a lot of time trying to climb up to get to their heads, to smack them in the head and do the usual shenanigans. So that was really good. And another one was in one of the fights, I forget exactly which fight it was, but I was caught by some effect. I don't know if it was frost or petrify. I think it was frost. So I was frozen and I was about to get hit, and the pawn basically tackled me down to prevent me from getting hit. So that was pretty useful stuff that they've added to the pawns, but these were all abilities that you've already seen in trailers and stuff like that. So during my play session, I fought a bunch of these Bjorken characters, which were the ones that look kind of like Vikings. I fought their wolves. I fought the Saurians, which still require you to hit them from the back, bust up their tails, because otherwise they're still incredibly tanky. We also fought the big frost giant, and I was trying to find this frost dragon, but I didn't really spend too much time on that because I came across this area that basically had a whiteout going, and what that means is like there was just big fog everywhere. Not fog, but like snow was making it impossible to see. Then you look at the minimap and you kind of are getting just like static from the TV, and you're like, oh, I can't see anything. I actually don't know what's going on in here. But luckily, while I was in that area, I was still able to like snag a particular quest item that enabled me to use the blacksmith, which I'm not sure how many people in my play session were able to use the blacksmith, because this item was like super well hidden. I was very lucky to just run into that. But yeah, it was an interesting thing running into the whiteout and trying to navigate that and try to figure out what was happening and just getting completely lost. And I'm like, oh, I can't spend too much time in here because there's limited time on this session. Gotta go. But yeah, so after that, I went and I fought the Undead Dragon, which is the one that you see in you know, in the trailer and stuff. But you don't actually fight the Undead Dragon to the death. It's more kind of like a rappel quest. You fight it for a little bit, then there's a cutscene. But that fight was really cool because I had picked up one of the improved skills. I had like this axe that had an improved skill for what is called gutting skewer. I think that on this version of the game, because it was the improved version, it was called like eviscerating skewer. So it was a more powerful version. It didn't really seem like it changed the animation any, but it allowed me to basically jump up on top of the head of the undead dragon. Just like the head explodes. He starts vomiting stuff from his head. It was crazy. It was really cool. You could also bust up his front legs and stuff like that. But basically very, very satisfying fight. Had an absolute blast going through that. Now, by the time this video comes out, I'm not sure if this information will already be public or not, but the way that the new ability slots work, because you guys may or may not be aware, the way that ability slots worked in Dragon's Dogma 2 is you basically hold down a button. I think it's left bumper, if I remember correctly, or is it right bumper? I forget. It's one of the bumpers, and then you press one of the faceplate buttons, so like triangle or square, X, or A, B, whatever. You guys get the idea, right? That's how you do skills. And because we're getting 6 skills this time around, one of the things that I was wondering is, okay, how do we use the other skills? Because there's only 4 faceplate buttons. And the way that it works is basically, if you're on a PlayStation controller, then one of your skills is going to be square and X, which if you're talking about like Xbox layout, this would be X and A. So basically the bottom faceplate button and the left faceplate button, and then for the other skill it's going to be triangle and circle, or Y and B, so the top faceplate button and the right faceplate button, and you guys can figure that out for whatever controller. But basically it's 2 button presses, the top and the right, and the bottom and the left, and using those is how you're going to have access to the other 2 skills that you use. So make sure that, skills that you use less, you'll put those in those particular bindings because they're a little bit trickier to pull off. So now let's talk a little bit more about the spoil system. So the way that the spoil systems work is, like I've already mentioned, you fight enemies, they might drop spoils, you loot them, and then you go back and you identify those spoils, and then you're going to get like new weapons, new armor, all of that stuff, and those are going to come with skills, which is something that wasn't really happening in base Dragon's Dogma 2. Now, in the original Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, the only way that you would get improved skills would be through rings. So you'd be able to get a ring that would tell you, this ring now improves this skill. Well, in this Dragon's Dogma, you're going to get it through weapons, but not only do you get improved skills, you're also going to get certain passives that will also increase your damage output or give you a little bit more utility. And I don't know just how RNG this is going to get, but from my experience, it seems that it can be very RNG. So in order to be able to get the weapon that has the exact combination that you want, that's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Now, some of the skills that I got to experience, which I got improved, like I already mentioned, I got Gutting Skewer, which got upgraded to Eviscerating Skewer. The other one that I got was an upgraded form of Cloudward Slash. Now, Cloudward Slash is the one where your character jumps up and then slashes down. So the version that I had was hitting both on the way up and on the way down, whereas the version that you have in Dragon's Dogma 2 only hits coming down. However, Arknight was very, very lucky, and he got this skill called Plenilune Slash, or whatever it was called, which is basically the improved version of Full Moon Slash. Now, Full Moon Slash is one where the fighter kind of like spins around, and he just does like this spinning move with a sword and then just slashes all around him. Well, the improved version, he spins around more, and then he does like a slow-mo slash. He also had one, which I forget exactly which improved skill it was, but it had like additional attacks at the end, which was pretty cool. So basically, Arknight got all of the better skills. He was much luckier when it came to RNG than me. It is what it is. The other skill that I got the improved version of was for the Spear Hand, and there's a skill called Secking Storm, which basically you get these blades that orbit around you, and I believe that in the base version of that skill you get like 4 blades, and then when enemies come close, the blades just shoot at them, kind of like Homeward Mass in Dark Souls, if you guys remember what that was like. Well, the version that I got, instead of having 4 blades, it had 6. So naturally it dealt more damage. It was the one skill that I was able to find for the Spear Hand. So it is what it is. But one of the things that I got to experiment with was the Blacksmith. So while you are looking for these spoils, and you do want to get spoils from enemies and tough enemies and all of that stuff, because that's where you're going to get the best, The blacksmith was able to craft stuff that would kind of like keep you going for a while. So once you do the quest for the blacksmith, you're going to be able to craft some of these weapons, and some of these weapons will come with the improved skills. So I think that I would be able to craft a sword that had the Plenilune slash thing that Arc Knight got, but it didn't have like any passives to go with it, because like I said, you can get these weapons to come with the improved versions of the skill, and like something that also increases your damage or gives you more utility or something along those lines, which is actually what you're going to be shooting for. The other one that I crafted, I think, just had the eviscerating skewer, if I'm not mistaken, which was the weapon that I ended up using on the Undead Dragon. But having the blacksmith there to at least be able to craft some stuff until you get a little bit luckier on RNG kind of helps mitigate the RNG nature of the spoils, which in my opinion is a good quality of life and a little bit of compromise that you can do, so that, you know, you as a player aren't playing like, let's say you're playing Magic Archer, and then all the time you're getting two-handed swords and two-handed axes and spoils, and you're like, God damn it, can I get one bow, please, for my character? So the blacksmith kind of helps out with that, which is a good system to have as well. Finally, one of the things that I got to do that I think most people in my group also didn't get to do was the wolf quest. So there was this quest that you were able to do where you were going to get a pet wolf. I think it required you doing the blacksmith quest first. I'm not 100% sure if those were linked, but it might have been, because I think most people also weren't able to get the item for the blacksmith quest. So once I completed that, I was just like heading out of town, and a character, a Beastren character, a little child, calls me and says, "Oh, I have this wolf here. Seems like he's hungry. Do you have like meat that you can give him?" And I think I also happened to pick up that meat for some reason. I don't remember picking it up. I don't know where I picked it up, but I was like, oh, it's telling me I can give him this item. So I gave him the meat, and then the wolf started following me around, and it also engaged in combat. So basically I got this little pet wolf. And you actually can interact with the wolf and pet it and whatnot. And then the wolf had this little mini quest that you could go on, where it would eventually lead you to like a treasure chest and all of that stuff. So basically, Dragon's Dogma 2 Dark Arisen is more Dragon's Dogma 2, and I'm most definitely here for it. I was instantly hooked the second I started playing, because Dragon's Dogma is Dragon's Dogma, and I friggin' love Dragon's Dogma. The performance gave me good hopes for the final version. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people are experiencing when the patches start hitting the base version of Dragon's Dogma 2. Hopefully, we will receive good news. But again, these are things that I would recommend people to hold off. Like, don't get caught in the hype and just be like, oh my god, it's looking absolutely amazing, I can't wait. Unless you're absolutely certain that you're not going to be experiencing performance issues, wait a little bit more. I'll be reporting on it as well the second I get the game, just to make sure that everything is up to snuff. But like I said, from what I've experienced there, silky smooth 60 FPS on the PS5 Pro, stable 30 FPS on the Switch 2 in handheld mode during a boss fight, which was pretty good. Pretty good all around. It's looking good. I'm excited to see what the final version is looking like. Let me know how you guys are feeling about Dragon's Dogma 2 Dark Arisen in the comments section down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz. And if you have any feedback for the team of Dragon's Dogma, they might be checking the creator videos and comment sections and all of that stuff. So be sure to leave your messages in the comments section down below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.